Bigfoot, Kupachara, Loch Ness Monster, the America meta. Are these urban legends, modern day folklore, or are these true life events? Today on Outcast Haven podcast number 30.
Oh my God, Kupachara.
Did you like the Kupachara?
I love it because you mispronounce so
What
much.
is it? What is it?
It's Chupacabra.
I'll redo it.
No, we're keeping it.
Great.
That's fine.
Kupachara.
Like idiots.
I'm okay with that because I've kind of mispronounced so many things in so many games that I don't even care anymore.
Dude, oh my God, so much. It's fine. I love it when you call us Outcast Havens. No, the Outcast Havens.
I always say it wrong.
Yeah.
I always say Outcast
It's like it's our own name.
Havens instead
Outcast.
of Outcast Haven. I always mispronounce that.
It's fine.
Let me redo it. Just let me do it.
No.
Let me redo it.
I'm not replacing it. That's perfect.
That's fine. You can leave it. I don't care.
I'll include some of this too, so that they know that you know. And we don't get comments talking about how, hey, it's actually Chupacabra. I'm a troll.
No. So I've renamed cards in Force of Will and DBS. So I'm renaming fictional characters now too. It's just what I do.
Makes sense.
So I'm going to ask you guys what these have in common. Okay. Kasai, Dorinthia, and Rhinar. That's the last 4 skirmish winners listed on the Fab website.
What are the dates on those?
Ira.
20th and 21st of February.
Right. And 3 of those are U.S. So United States loves Warrior. We are Warrior fans, obviously, through and through. There's still a lot of IRA players that we've seen pop up in these skirmishes, but it's definitely a Warrior meta here in the United States.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with like the fact that we're reinforcing the world's opinions of us as a country by being bad people and making sure other people want to not have fun playing the game. So no, I don't have a problem with Warrior. I don't have a problem with Warrior. It's actually it's fun to play into Warrior. I was just giving Blake because he loves that deck. He loves the mind games.
It's true. I do. I like talking to Rob and having him acknowledge that that's part of it. Just like messing with people. And I'm just like, I like it. I like that we get to mess with people and play a game that I enjoy at the same time. It's great. I think the most interesting thing about seeing all the Dorinthia and Kasai is going to be like where that takes us. That's my next big, like, that's the thing that I'm most interested in going forward is we've kind of basically what we've done, I think, in the States is we took a look at what they were doing in New Zealand and we view that as the meta. So we thought, how do we beat the meta? And people just said, tall Dorinthia beats Ira. And that's what has resulted as, like looking at that, that's what it's given us. And that's what it's resulted in is a Warrior heavy meta because we believed it could beat Ira. And so far it's kind of shown that if nothing else, it goes blow for blow with Ira. And now I'm curious what creeps up that kind of comes in to be that next piece of the meta.
I think 2 decks immediately pop up with Ira phasing out in America. So if Ira does phase out and people see this push to Warrior, Bravo immediately pops up with a good pilot. You can't poor pilot Bravo, and I think Kano becomes a force. I'll be honest, seeing Kasai win, I just think of Kano into Kasai. It's like a 90% win percentage. I mean, you really have to brick hard to lose into Kasai with Kano because I don't know that I can put enough pressure on where you're going to block anything, and just if they're going to dump hand, they're going to lose. So that to me is interesting. Dorinthia, obviously, who goes first makes a huge difference in the Kano matchup. But if Bravo does not have to tech for Ira and can tech for Warrior, that's going to be some good matchups.
I don't think Ira's going
anybody.
away. Like I don't think Ira's going away. I think it's too good of a deck. That's simple, but it's easy to pick up. Like it's easy to put together and throw together and bring to your locals. So I don't think that Ira is going to disappear by any means. I just think that Warrior. I don't know what it is, honestly. Like Warrior just was really its popularity. I feel like before stuff really entirely closed down, Warrior was kind of being talked about as like that good deck. Like that's like, this is the deck where you play those mind games and it has a lot of answers to a lot of things and can make your opponent make mistakes. And in a younger player pool, that I feel like reigns victorious a lot of times. So yeah, I mean, I think that it makes sense that Warrior's really popular right now. It's a really, really strong deck, but I don't think Ira's going away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Ira's going away. I think the issue is Ira has kind of hit that point where it's like teched perfectly to have good matchups across the board, and it does a lot of things really well. The issue is it's the card that's kind of central to its strategy into the meta and into itself. And that's the thing is like Ira is good because it doesn't cannibalize itself. Like Ira is such a tight matchup that like you see a lot of Iras come out because Ira is good against everything else, but it's also good against each other in like a weird way, but it doesn't really cannibalize itself because like you just see so many of them. Like the volume is so high because its matchup is good into everything. So it gets to the top, you've got a bunch of them. I think the issue is if there comes a point, right, where Ira players start to go, okay, our losing matchup is Warrior. So how do we beat Warrior? Well, guess what card is just absolutely garbage in Warrior that's great into a wide meta? Flick Flack, because Warrior is going tall. So Flick Flack doesn't really do anything because it's not turning combo cards into block cards that are blocking for like 5 and taking a lightning strike, because basically what Warrior's doing is like, oh cool, you're not going to block anything. I'll just swing for 3 or I'll go for 4 and I'll kind of go over your Flick Flack. Oh, you're going to give me another Flick Flack? Cool, I'm fine with that. And basically it chews through the Flick Flacks because you have to stack them instead of using that secondary attack, and Warrior will just go over the one where you can't do that. So when you start to see like more unmovables come in and they start to like parse down things in the deck that make the deck good, and now you're kind of muddying the waters of quality inside the deck, then that's when I think Ira starts to have an issue, because now it's no longer the most efficient version of Ira. It's a version of Ira that's trying to beat Warrior go tall. So it's adding cards in and taking cards out to plus that matchup. But inevitably at any game, if you start to tech for one matchup specifically because that's your matchup, somewhere there's going to be some leaks. You're going to let something else come through that's better. And if they start to run a less efficient deck, do they start to lose to Kano? Because Kodachi into something big is good, but now they're less efficient because they're not able to run all of those cards that make it so efficient.
Yeah, I mean, because you're losing your, if you want to run the unmovable, like Rob was saying, he's like, you know, that guy dropped his second unmovable on me, which I wasn't expecting. He's like, I don't think you have that yellow sigil anymore. I think that's what you probably took out to tech in the unmovable. And as that starts to happen, yeah, you're gonna start to lower your wins into other matchups, but makes sense into a Warrior dominated meta to do stuff like that. So it's a good point. I'm curious to see how fast the shift happens into, like, you know, our like next week. Are we gonna have Ira decks that are kind of skewed, or are we gonna still see Ira decks built similar but just played differently? I don't even know, because I don't think that you take this, like, the free defense reaction is still a solid choice, especially when Dorinthia does swing a second time a lot of times, you know. So I don't think that we start to see like a massive shift in like build, but we'll see.
The issue is if you're stacking multiple Flick Flacks to block like a reaction from Dorinthia to stop that second swing or something like that, you end up like killing your hand, and your hand becomes weak because your flick flacks, like the flick flacks that are 2 and 3s, they're just not good enough. If they hit you with like a red overpower, you just burned a card or two basically to actually still take damage and let them come at you again. And I think that's where the issue is. So now then the question becomes like, do you run unmovable? The problem is if you take out Flick Flack, the benefit of Flick Flack is it's a 0 cost card. So it hey, guess what it pitches great for? Kadachi. And if you start to take some of those cards out, you really do start to create like a convoluted strategy where you're not really doing what the deck necessarily wants to do. So I'm just curious, like how much diversion from what they do well will Ira players push themselves to try and plus the warrior matchup that is, and maybe it's not, maybe they just think, you know what, I just have to outpilot the warrior player and it's a 50-50 matchup, and that's possible too. But I still think the deck that has the most opportunity to like shine that hasn't seen a lot of play is Kano. Like that's the deck that I'm waiting for to break through. But I think the challenge is it's so pilot, like it's so demanding on the pilot. That's the issue. It's so demanding on the pilot to just play so tight and so.
I'll be honest. When these skirmishes popped up, I didn't think these were going to be the stepping stone to. I thought these were going to be fun events because that's how they were coined. So the only skirmish I did, I brought a untested 4-card swap out Kano to a skirmish, thinking, not knowing there's going to be 60 some people in it, not knowing this was like a testing, like this isn't where you test your decks. This is where you bring your decks. I was like, oh, that's a little disappointing that I didn't bring my optimal build. I bring a suboptimal build to a huge tournament. But now I think we know that skirmishes for right now, that's you're bringing your best stuff. It's not. I'm still surprised because skirmishes were coined as like the beginner tournament. This is the tournament for the new players. We're not giving first place mats. It's all random drawing on participation. So suddenly to have it just be this is the thing was a little surprising to me. I'm going to be honest. I thought armories were the events that we crank hard at. Well, armories have kind of gone down like this because the skirmish is this thing and it's the popular item on the table right now. And so I guess that's going to define the meta until they're done in the end of April. And then we'll be back to armories and playing where you're getting a good prize for first place. So I still, it was still a shock to me. I'm still shocked that the skirmishes are the thing right now. I didn't think that's what they were meant for. So that's a little surprising.
I'm glad. I'm just happy that we have like stuff to report on. Like there's results to talk about. So if people, I'm glad that people are being competitive with the skirmishes because it seems
absolutely
to be,
just surprised me.
Yeah.
Because me and Blake were talking before, like we're going to bring all these different weird, crazy decks to these. And it's like, well, now you're just wasting your time if you're doing that. You can't bring your fun, like crazy off the wall stuff. It's like, you got to bring your good tuned deck, and try to make a placing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and some of that comes down to the fact that, you're starting to see the reality of it is probably the fact that I think people just were like, oh yeah, like we'll play for fun. It'll be, it'll be a good time to like get to play my deck and stuff like that. And then they kind of said, hey, by the way, we're going to go ahead and give 6 XP per win. So they like doubled the XP that you get from normal events. I think that's a lot of it is people see the opportunity because I like it. I think that's actually like one of the cool things about this game is that you see a lot of games, they kind of have some sort of system. Not a lot of people really pay attention to it. You'll have some players who, it almost becomes like some of the point systems almost become like what they do in like the PGA or something, or like the tennis, whatever the world tennis stuff is, because what ends up happening is like really good players only show up to big events. They don't go play local after local after local after local. But so far in Fab, like there's something to the XP. Like people see that number and they're just like, I want more. I must have more. And it's become this like addiction where, you know, everybody wants to be the first to 1,000 or the first to 2,000 or the first to 10,000. And people are just going to push hard for it. And it's like, I mean, it's cool. I think it's great that there's like a striving point for people and a comparison point, but it's also interesting because I think as the game goes on, what you'll end up happening is, personally at least I think, is that you'll have people who are just really good players who have time commitments where they can't do the grinding thing. They can't play in 4 locals a week or whatever to get their XP crazy high, but they'll somehow show up to every event and they'll be competitive or they'll win stuff. And everyone will be like, who's this guy? But all the really good players are like, oh, no. He does this every time. He shows up at these huge events and he just wins stuff. It's annoying. And then you'll have like your grinders who everybody just knows are like, yeah, these guys always win. They always play. It's all they do. But it'll be an interesting thing that I think it'll be cool to see fleshed out over time, because I definitely don't think that just because people have a ton of like XP that necessarily means they're like a champion. You know what I mean? And that's not a knock on people who have been grinding,
Right.
but like you look at like over in New Zealand, right? And someone like Kale has like, you know, double what some of the other players have that are good. But then, you know, you got guys who are really good players who are almost like 1,000 XP behind Kale. And, you know, Kale just likes to play and he plays a ton. And other guys maybe just don't have as much time, you know, availability. But I think the 6 XP compared to 3 XP had some people just chomping at the bit to go for it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it was funny. We were like, Rob and I were actually having a conversation just back and forth in our messages about like when the Play Anywhere first came out. And I know like we tried doing like one, and it was just like a lot of work to try and get like the people registered, and like it wasn't working perfectly when it was first announced. And I feel like we kind of all just let it drop, and we're of the same mind that like, what do these points mean? Like what's the point of it to like go through the effort to get the points?
Yeah.
And I was telling him, I was like, dude, I kind of got FOMO right now. Like, I wish we would have been, because how many hundreds of games would we have points for if we had just been like, it's like we could be in the leaderboard, we could be top 20 in the United States. And it's like, it doesn't really mean anything, but we could be it. And I kind of wish I was, because it'd be fun to be like grinding out competitively, but it's like I'm 376th right now. I'm good. I'm happy with my 12.9 points or whatever it is I've got, because I've played 4 games on the official thing now. It's like, oh.
I think when the ELO rating, which there's not much out for US players right now, that's going to be the true rating of the top. I mean, and if you look at the top of the leaderboards right now, it's quite apparent those are a lot of the best players. So yeah. I think that'll eventually, and that's only at professional events, and you'll get those points from doing well at the professional events, and that will be the stepping stone. And I'm at the same mindset as you guys. At XP, we could have had a lot more. I don't feel like I'm missing out on the skirmishes, to be honest. There's so many of them, and they're $10-15 a pop, and if you do 10, I mean that's a couple booster boxes of unlimited to hit all of them by the time you're said and done. So it I know me and Blake signed up. All 3 of us signed up for the one that's paying money. I mean, that's the kind of ones I want to focus on, that there's going to be a cash prize. I know this last weekend, me and Blake did the Red Riot Games Classic Constructed, and that was an experience, just because when me and Dane played the first game of Classic Constructed after playing Blitz for months, it was the clunkiest thing ever. And
it's like, oh god, I forgot how slow and like measured this game is compared to Blitz. It's totally different.
Right. I'll just give my quick recap of Red Riot Games, my pros and cons on it. So quick recap is I went 2-2. My 2 losses were draws. I switched my game plan at the end of game 1 as we were getting down in time, and started taking a lot of shots from my Katsu opponent, trying to just save cards to win the game. And so that kind of stunk, just because I didn't expect it. It's a control game, but if you're taking a minute for a decision point, which can be common, especially as new players, it's almost impossible with two control style decks to get through it. I think talking to Jacob Pearson after the tournament, he was in my pod. We talked about it, and there's solutions to it. I think the only thing the tournament was very well run. Judges would hop in. They did a great job holding the tournament. The only thing I wish they would have done is 60 minutes instead of 50. And the other thing I wish they would do is, I never think you can end on a person's turn without giving the other person a turn, which they have now changed to that it ends at, because if I know there's 2 minutes left and Dane gets to go and I'm in Dane's lethal, I can sit and wait 2 minutes, end times on me, the game's over. So you can still do that same stall tactic, knowing either we both lose or just I lose. You're going down with me could be a strategy, which is poor, but it just could be. So I'm glad they did it where the other person does get a chance, because that's going to eliminate a stall tactic at the end of the game. You have to have at least equal turns at the end. So I'm glad that they did that change on their official announcement.
Yeah, I also went 2-2. I had one tie and one loss for my losses. And the tie was the same kind of thing. Like, we were legitimately, if we could have had one more turn each, it probably gets decided in that, looking at both of our hands. If one of us does one thing imperfectly, the other guy loses, or the other guy wins. And I think the same thing. I think we've kind of talked about this, and this might be worthy of a little talking point, just because I would love to hear other people's opinions. I think some of that will get fleshed out over time. I think that I think splitting the difference, right? Because they went with the nobody gets turns from there like the 4 turns, your typical like turn 0 to turn 3 kind of thing that a lot of games have. And now they've kind of landed in the middle. And I think the fact that they're making an effort and they're willing to change, right? They've now had multiple different strategies for end of time situations in the game here in just the last few months, shows that they're trying to flesh out the right thing early. And I suppose that's something that for people like us who have never been like the new people in a game, like, right, we've never been the people who have like started a game. And as a result of that, we've never been the guinea pigs for tournament procedures. And right now, I think that's all we're being, is we're kind of just being used as guinea pigs, not in a bad way, but it's what they have to deal with right now. And they're trying to iron out and flesh out the best way to deal with it. The challenge of this game is that it is so measured and methodical that oftentimes 2 turns isn't going to decide it anyway. If you were going to tie before 2 turns, you're probably going to tie after 2 turns, especially because players are much more likely. Like, if I know I'm going to lose to you and I can block with my whole hand and I'm not getting dominated, I'm not going to take a chance. If I don't think I can win next turn, I'm just going to put all 12 cards on I'm going to put all 12 block. I'm just going to set it all down and be like, if you can swing over 12 and kill me, congratulations. If not, we're tying. I'm not going down alone. Because I mean, that's it, right? Like, if I think I'm going to lose or we're both going to lose, I'm probably just going to both lose, because I don't want to take the chance that I block with 2 cards that maybe I can win on my turn. If I'm not sure that I can win on my turn, I probably don't take a chance on the defensive turn and risk the chance of taking a loss, because there's no reason to do that. Like, there's just no reason to do that, except like, oh, I'll keep this 1 card to maybe they do something stupid and don't block it. It's just a weird situation. And that's kind of the problem, is this game doesn't have, like a lot of games have, kind of an all-in moment. And this game doesn't inherently have the ability to just pick any turn in the game and go all in. You often have to set up an all-in turn. So if you don't know time is coming, or you can't time it just right to where you hit your all-in turn with your time, you're kind of screwed anyway. So that's the one weird thing about time in this game, is a lot of games we play, like Dragon Ball, has an absolute ability. If you know it's your last turn, you're just like, I'm throwing it all in. Like, you basically you dump everything you have into a swing and hope that you win. And this game doesn't inherently have that, which I think is why we're presented with the issue of a time solution not being an easy thing to figure out.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Like, we'll see what they end up with. I don't mind the I'll be honest, I don't mind the double loss. I don't think the time in the long run is even going to be an issue in like top play. Like, I think that people are going to just get people that are going to come to events for the purpose of being competitive are going to get better and faster and be able to process quicker what's happening on the board, know the opponent's deck better, be able to take less time assessing the threat that's going to be coming back next turn, depending on how many cards they take from hand. Like, that type of thing is just going to get faster, and I think that time is going to be a lot less of a problem. The one thing that I don't love about it now is how like a practiced player can kind of get in trouble a little bit playing into a new player who is taking that extra time, especially if like, you know, it's one of you two because you both run Bravo, like taking Bravo and you're like good and you're taking 20-second, 25-second turns, which we talked about. Let's pick that up a little bit, boys. We'll make that a little quicker. But we, we could sit down and just end up going to time and double lossing anyways, just because naturally a slower, more defensive deck, and like we just kind of get screwed. So that's the one thing that I don't love about this right now, but I don't think it's going to matter long run. So the double loss, like, yeah, it feels bad. It seems like a clunky solution, but it is stopping the slow play to a certain degree. And if you're playing someone who's just spiteful, like if I'm not winning, no one's winning. I'm sorry, dude, you got a opponent. So
yeah,
I think in this instance, there was no malice on the part of the players.
Yeah,
truly, I think when they do this, going classic constructed that hasn't even been played in the countries, Canada and America primarily, then you're getting your pairings and saying time starts now. So then we get in, make a table in TTS, time's already started, load up the table in TTS. Then I have to see what your hero is. And now I have to sideboard for your hero. Okay. So now we're 45 minutes to try to get this game done. And that's granted that you don't lag, you don't hit a stupid button, you don't do anything. I just think going into this, knowing it's classic constructed, you have to do all this, and we're doing it on a TTS platform that sometimes just doesn't work well with you. It can be stupid. It's free, but so we put up with that because it's cheap, and 90% of the time it works perfectly. But I just think going into it, they should have just said, let's do 60 minutes, new players, TTS, 60 minutes, and they don't have to worry about it. And obviously the top players from New Zealand weren't taking long because they've been doing this a lot longer. So they, like Jacob said, he takes 5 to 10 seconds for his thought process. That's it per turn, 5 to 10 seconds. There's not many players in America that are going to do that.
I mean, also, I would say, dude's a machine who practices 8 hours a day for 2 weeks leading up. Like,
right. But he's not the only one that makes those quick time. If you watch some of from Blitz, I mean, you saw, was it Kale and Kieran's match? That was like just boom, boom. I mean, they knew what they were doing before the other one even put their card down because they already knew what the other card the person was playing. It was insanity.
I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind, like, because I know, at least in some of the miniatures games I played, that like chess clocks were pretty popular. Like, it was just like each person gets 25 minutes on their clock, and you just take your turn, blah, 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 hit the button, your turn. And it just counts down the individual times. And if you time out, you lose.
There's a lot of people that hate that. I don't know why people
have a problem with it. Huh?
There are people that hate it.
I'm sure that's because they're slow ass players.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I think that it's the same thing, right? Like, I think at first inherently when we were talking about it, like the double loss thing was kind of frustrating because it feels unfair only because I think while we're not New Zealand seasoned, like we play enough that my decision points are pretty quick. And a lot of times I get frustrated with the idea of a double loss because I feel like that's going to punish me because I'm a pretty quick player. Inherently, I typically know a deck I'm going to play pretty well, and I make fast decisions, whether that's the correct thing to do or not. Sometimes,
decisions
sometimes
are fast. They're not necessarily correct. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah. Sometimes I play with Jacob Pearson pace. I just play with not Jacob Pearson skill
More
and
of like a
intensity.
Nichols or Dangle SB
More
quality.
more of like a I play like I play with like my decision making on like a kamikaze style game plan. Like if you watch the first game last night of Reinar versus Kano on our live stream, sometimes I just kamikaze and I'm like, I'm gonna win or I'm gonna lose. That's what's gonna happen. It's gonna happen hella fast. And so I feel like I feel like I don't like the double loss mainly because I get punished for it. But I think to your guys' point, and especially to you, Dane, I think when you go to like a top table or when you play in a competitive level event, the reality is if we sit down across from one another, neither one of us wants to tie because that gives us a loss. So I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure we don't. And because you also don't want to take a loss for a tie, you're going to play with pace as well. And if you hear 5 minutes in the round, you're going to pick that pace up even more, no matter how critical the decision points are, because the feeling of like impending doom, if you're at a tournament and anybody who's been at like a tournament hosted in a room with like the judge going, we got 5 minutes of the round, and you kind of have that like moment where your like heart stops. You're like, oh no, can I finish this game in 5 minutes? You start to play with a real sense of urgency because realizing that the loss happens if you don't win makes it so there's incentive to not tank and just try to get the tie.
Yeah, no, I like my grandpa always said, told from a young age, if you're gonna F up fast and F up hard. Like just like commit to it. Just go, like so yeah.
Looking back, that wasn't the best advice, Grandpa, but I appreciate it.
It led to like some, joining the army and some decision points that took place after that. But you know what? I'm okay now. So no.
Hey, sometimes you just gotta send it. Just gotta send it.
But I mean, it did. I started like looked at the clock, and even with my first round opponent, I'm like 11 minutes, 15 minutes, 11 minutes. This is what we have. If you go slow, we just both lose. We both lose.
Yeah. Just verbalize that honestly. Like,
and if you're playing, if you're a new player,
like, hey,
we've got just innately speed up if that's the pace you're playing.
Yeah.
And as these tournaments go on, it's weird because in the skirmishes it doesn't happen. Maybe it's because the games are so dang quick. But even then, why is a skirmish 30 minutes and a classic constructed is 40? Like, or 50? Shouldn't we just at least double it? Make it equal? Make it 30, 60?
I think it needs to be doubled. I don't know.
I don't know. Every game has that issue. Every game I've ever played has that issue because, like in Dragon Ball Super, it's not double the time for a best of 3, or triple the time. Like they say 30, they'll do 30 minutes for a best of 1, and then they'll do 60 minutes for a best of 3. You're like, hold on, wait. What if we play the third game? Like, what happens if we go to game 3? How do we fit the third game in? Like, I don't understand how you think.
Which with sideboarding happens a lot. So
with sideboarding in between games.
It's almost counterintuitive because your second game should automatically take longer because you have a sideboard in between game 1 and 3 or 1 and 2, which makes that second game harder to win for both players, unless you're both horrible sideboarders.
Well, and on top of that, I was just going to say, on top of the sideboard being a part of that, like you have to keep in mind that they've now come to the conclusion, and most players have come to the conclusion that in a best of 3 world, if you're losing game 1 and you think the sideboard helps you, just scoop, just quit, because like you're better taking the loss fast and then trying to win 2 more games than trying to find a way to win game 1 and then lose game, or like it gets in a weird spot. It puts players in a bad position, and I think that's what ends up happening if you don't give appropriate time for rounds. Is people start making bad decisions because they're
I don't think it's a bad decision. It's what they're. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, because like so in a game, like you're gonna have good and bad matchups, and a lot of times a sideboard is affixed to that. So this game's a little different, but like in Dragon Ball Super, you've got like a hyper aggro deck and a control deck, and like all the aggro deck needs is to side in like these 6 cards, and it has an answer to like the control deck's like big win con, right? So it's like games 2 and 3, that deck's probably going to actually win because the sideboard solves that problem and it's a stronger deck. You see that type of like that type of interaction between decks a lot. So yeah, if I know I can win, it's like 80-20 in games 2 and 3, 100% I'm going to skip the first game. But I don't think that Fab has that. Like you're not gonna have that same thing. So I don't know if that necessarily applies.
So
it is crazy because even we talked about this before my last Force of Will tournament with my son. There's a strong deck Rizard, and I said we were talking to one of the guys we play with, and he's like, if he gets these 2 pieces out, scoop immediately to go to game 2 so you can sideboard in, and then because he can drag it out, that can drag out a game. But if you scoop, like you said, get to game 2. We don't have that ability because one, if you scoop in this, you're done for the whole day.
Yeah.
Unless you can call a judge to tell you that you're going to lose, you know?
So here's my question. This was brought up in my pod's discussion, is if we get to a point where people feel like the timing and the sideboarding or whatever doesn't suit certain deck types, how big of a negative is that? I think it's a significant negative, but do you think that it's ever a problem, or do you think that it becomes a big negative that playing control decks effectively becomes a losing strategy? Because what ends up happening is you will end up at least taking one loss to time, which is a really unfortunate. As somebody who likes to play control decks, I hate the idea of losing to time. I don't like the idea of sitting down with a deck and saying I can beat my opponent, but time's a bitch. Like I'm not beating time. Time wins.
Yeah, I don't know in this game that control necessarily means, because at least right now where it stands, control doesn't necessarily mean slow. Like you look at Bravo control, right? He is just, his pace of damage is different. It's more staccato, right? Like it's gonna like big hit, block, just slowly pinging with the hammer, big hit, right? So it's like you're not, as long as that Bravo player is playing quickly and their opponent is playing quickly, knowing what's happening, like you're still not, like you're not gonna see, it's not like DBS is what I'm trying to say, where a control deck, its goal is to drag out the game. Like it wants to
disagree with that
to a later game. Will you?
As playing Bravo,
yeah,
and I was playing Dorinthia, I was trying to get their threats out of their board. So when I saw their big threats, I was dropping hand to block those big threats, especially when I was spending resources, which meant I wasn't clubbing back. So when we went to time, the score was 27-13 or 27-15.
Right. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I'm saying, would you say that that's comparative to DBS, like a deck that wants to hit 3 energy and a deck that wants to hit 8 energy? Like that level of dragging out the game and saying no to your opponent?
The way I built the deck, yes, because I was building that deck was meant to go off every 5 to 6 turns. So I blocked everything. No damage was getting through from either player. And then I would set up an Emergent Dominance or big Crippling Crush to either bleed their hand, not worrying about doing damage, but bleed hand. So I wanted to get their good cards into their graveyard, which just means the threats were gone. So the way I played it, it was a very DBS style strategy.
Oh, okay. All right. Even playing into your deck, though, I didn't feel like I was like I didn't feel like the game was dragging out. I feel like you were just stopping me. Yeah. I don't know. I think it doesn't feel the same, but I could just be wrong.
Yeah. It doesn't feel the same, but it does definitely, like, Bravo is very much a setup deck. I mean, I played
slower.
It in the.
I'm not saying it's not slower. I get that it's not slow. I get that it's not the same pace as like a dash boost deck, right? I understand that.
Right.
I'm saying it's not, with the meta as it is now. I don't think that it's like you can't play Bravo because of the time rules. Like I don't think that it's at that level.
Right. I mean, I don't think it's quite that bad, but it definitely is a little nerve-wracking. And I think that that's the issue, is like when we went to Atlantis games and played at the Armor, we were playing Blitz. I went to turns 2 of my 4 games with Bravo. Just by nature. I wasn't playing slow. I mean, you guys play with me enough to know I'm a speedy decision maker, sometimes to a fault. So like I don't play slow, and I don't think the other guys were playing inherently slow. It just, I would hit a matchup that was really tight. I played Control Ira, I played another Bravo, and those games went to almost a time. Like we were in turns and it got decided in turns. Otherwise it's a tie. And I think that to me, that de-incentivizes me as the Bravo player from taking a risk, because I don't want to go 2-2 because I lost in turns. Like that feels worse than just losing in a blowout. I'd rather be dash blitz down, because I would rather just lose fast. Like if I'm going to lose, get it over with. I don't want to play for 35 minutes and then take a loss because we couldn't finish.
I think you hit on the head. The most disappointing part was to play for the 50 minutes to no effect. It's I'll relate it to this, is when Mason was playing sports and youth football, there's no overtime. You go to a football game, everybody's jacked up, it ends in a tie, and you just walk away like, well, that was a tie. Sweet. Well, let's go get lunch. I mean, it just sucks.
Yeah.
It's incredibly anticlimactic to not have a winner. And I'm not saying that like you can't play Bravo, because obviously like Kale performed really well at the calling with Bravo, but again, that's really high level, and that's the question. Right. Is I don't think you want to be in a situation, and whether that's adjusting to time or whether that's just an adjustment overall, I think that there definitely needs to be a tight eye kept on the potential of certain decks feeling unplayable at armories, because again, this is a game where you're not playing for random like alternate art cards. You're playing for cold foils. And if I'm playing for a cold foil and I think Bravo gets me a loss simply because I went to time, I am not taking Bravo, because I'm not taking a chance that I can't walk away with a cold foil simply because I took a double loss one round because we couldn't resolve our game.
Right. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all think that this is going to be resolved as the player base gets more in tune to the game, but I just think early on some of these tournaments, the TOs need to realize this and maybe go to 60 minutes. That's it, just 60 minutes, just 1 hour versus 50. I think that'll help. I think that'll take a lot of the ties out just by getting that extra 10 minutes.
Well, the announcement even said, didn't it, that like the stuff can be adjusted to the TO's discretion.
Correct. Yep. So I think going forward, they know that if they're going to do classic constructed, just do 60 minutes. If we're there for 50 and we're only doing 4 rounds of Swiss, I'm okay with the extra 40 minutes if I'm putting in 4 hours as it is and all that. So let's just do it right, avoid the ties. And once we start playing in person, this is all going to be eliminated and we'll be fine. But for the meantime, we'll just add the 10 minutes.
I think that's the biggest thing is in person, sometimes like seeing the card and not having to zoom in on it with your mouse, like seeing it directly across from you on a mat. If I see Iron Song Response, I don't have to ask what color it is, and I don't have to hold my mouse over it and hit Alt to look at it. Right. Like I can see that it's red. Okay, cool, +3, and we just move on. So you're not having to discuss every play with me, which that alone just burns 10 minutes every game that you can't get back, because I'm going, wait, what color is that? Or I'm having to hover over things, or I'm having to read effects versus just look down at the mat across from me.
Well, yeah. And I had 2 Ninja matchups, and the first Ninja matchup went to time. The second one, I won in 35 minutes, and it was still a close game. It's just, he made his decisions quick. I made my decisions quick. It made a huge difference. He kind of knew what he was doing and what he was trying to set up. I knew what I was trying to do and what I was trying to set up, and the game flowed, and we got done in 35, 40 minutes. So we were well under the time, and it was very similar deck to the first one. It just boom, 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 and went faster.
Mm-hmm.
So we're close. It's just until we get there, just give us the extra 60 minutes, because the new players shouldn't be penalized as well, and the seasoned players shouldn't be penalized from getting a new player first round. And in my second round, I honestly helped the player who was playing Dorinthia because he was a newer player, which at that point I really didn't care if I got a tie, because as soon as you get the first one, you're done anyway for making top cut. So I probably spent more time just explaining his cards to him, which didn't matter at that point, and he's a new player, so I wanted a good taste that he enjoyed it and had good people to play against. So that's all I have on that subject.
And that's all I got to say about that. What else you got for us?
Just kind of, we'll wrap her up, right? Just kind of do some closing thoughts here.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Do a quick little guy.
So coming up, we got locally here, we're going to have our first webcam armory tournament, which is going to be awesome with full prize support. Then we have another armory event after that down at Atlantis Hobby, who's been really helping our community get armory events going. And we've worked with them. They've worked with the community. And I think if you're trying to build your community, just get close with your LGS. And then skirmishes. I'm only signed up for one currently. I don't know what you guys are. When I get back from vacation, I will be looking for more. So I don't know what you guys are signed up for right now.
I got 2 right now on the docket.
Okay.
Blake, what do you
Yeah,
got?
I'm kind of doing the skirmish thing by the seat of my pants. Like I'm basically just gonna be like, do we have any plans on Saturday? Oh, there's a skirmish. Cool, I'll sign up, kind of thing.
Right.
Not gonna, other than the one that's for a box of Monarch. I'm not really
Right.
then those are the kind of things I put on the schedule for sure. Yeah.
No, I'm actually, little insight into our lives. Blake's wife is my boss for work, and I was telling her, I'm like, I think I might take like just a personal day next week sometime. And Rob was like, dude, you should play in this like skirmish event that they run on Tuesdays at 1. And I'm like, I think I'm taking Tuesday as a personal day. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. I might try to hop in there, but it'll be good.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So I'm in the same boat as you are, Blake. If when I get back in town, I'll just go to Fab TCG, click on the events, click on skirmishes, see what's there, and I'll just sign up if I'm free that night and rock some cards. I think I'll run pretty much exclusively Kano. There's 2 other decks I may throw out there. One would be Dash, and the other would possibly be the Ira that Kale ran last night. Just go wide, just super aggressive Ira. It was super cool.
I think, for these, until Wizard starts popping up, because that was the only thing that really scared me with it, I might be fielding Benji, actually.
That'd be awesome.
That it's because the list that I was building this was because I stopped testing it and like working on it like 2 weeks before the calling, 3 weeks before the calling took place, and like everyone was just hyping Wizard, and I was like, Wizard is a trash matchup for me. Like it's like I start the game in kill range, so like it was pretty rough. And but I think if Wizard's not going to be prominent right now in the States in all these skirmishes and stuff, I might whip him back out because it was super fun. Like I love playing that deck, and it's a little less. I don't know. The build that I've got's a little less. At least I view it a little less cutesy, like triggering his unblockable. But I like the deck, so mess with that.
Blake, what are you bringing?
Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing is like I know the skirmishes are for something, right? They're like for XP, but I don't know. I'm kind of leaning towards this idea of the fact that I've been slowly working to assemble my Infinity Gauntlet of all the class legendaries, and I kind of just want to play a little bit of everything. Like I figured my thing is
right? Prizing is random, so just like, play what you want for skirmishes.
Pricing is random in the skirmishes. You get XP for winning, but it would be cool to be the first person to win 2 skirmishes with 2 different decks. Like that would also be a little notch in the belt. So
I want to skirmish with Kano. I would retire him for a new character.
Yeah, I think I'm honestly gonna try either Claw's Brute because that one's just fun to play, or I might break out Kano because it's fun to just do wizard things and play whatever I want to play. And then it's like that's like one of those decks where it's like you can set it up, but also sometimes it's like the most RNG deck of all the decks in the game because sometimes you're just going, you know what? They're at 12 health. They're not swinging for lethal. Let's see if we can win this thing. You just start pitching and doing stuff, and sometimes you hit the nuts, and it's great. So I've got that, and then the other one is I think I'm gonna probably try and keep tweaking this Katsu build that I've got because it's just fun to play. Katsu's fun. It's different. I had everything for the deck except Heron's Flight, and I just got the notification that it's shipped. So, so my Heron's Flight are on their way.
I'm excited to be able to. So you and I on Tuesday night live streams now, we can like look at each other's hands and giggle to each other, and Jason can feel like a loser. It's gonna be so much fun.
I'm okay with that. You guys can giggle with your damn ninja hands. I'm fine.
To be fair, Jason got his fair share of giggling just seeing my wizard hands on Tuesday, because
I know.
Just hearing Jason go, "Oh my god." Oh my god. Like multiple times I'm like, I don't know what's happening right now. Like top deck Jesus is coming through.
Yeah, the opening hand, I'm like, well, unless you top deck against that, I think Dane's got it. And then he's got the top deck. I'm like, oh, that's kind of going to be rough for Dane. There's nothing better than when you draw 4 cards in Wizards, you have 2 blue with the Sterna forked on your open hand, and you go, ooh, you're not going to like me when I'm done with this. There's your half your life on turn 1.
I mean, I hit Voltic, I think, or whatever, and then the next turn I drew my hand and I was like, oh, I got forked lightning. This could be interesting. And then I top deck Stir, and then I top deck Blazing, and then I top deck Snapback, and I was like, what just happened? Like, is this how Wizard works all the time?
I'm okay.
He's back.
Anything else, guys?
I don't think so.
I'm good.
Okay.
Dane, you want to close her out?
You bet. All right. Well, if that is it, then we will wrap up today's podcast. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate it. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Literally no real benefit to us, but let's just know that we're doing things that people like, and we like that. Join us on Tuesdays, 9:30 Central Time. We always do our live stream there. We have guests popping in and out a little more frequently now as we're picking up steam in week 30 of not missing a live stream. No, it's
we're close to 30.
Yeah, something like that. Whatever it is. But been doing that and having a blast with it, and love getting some high-profile players on and jamming games with them. So join us in the comments there, and you can hit the bell to get notifications for that. But other than that, really just appreciate what you guys do as far as commenting, letting us know what you like, pointing out our mistakes. We don't mind that as long as you're not being an ass about it. We like to learn too. So look forward to next week, Tuesday, seeing some of you guys join us there, and we will talk to you later. Peace.
Watch out for chapaburas.
Chapaburas. Kachaburas. The chachakuras.
Kachaburas. God damn it, Jason.